Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Michelle Nelson, and I'm the social media content specialist here at Field Routes. Thank you for taking time out of your day today to join us for Automate Your A&R and Completely Change Your Bottom Line, featuring Andrea Dahlgren, Senior Vice President of Business Development at A.R.M Solutions. Today's presentation is about taking the next step in using the latest A&R technologies to ensure your focus is on growth and success rather than the headache of collections. Before we get started though, I'll give you a little bit of background on Andrea. Andrea Dahlgren is Senior Vice President of Business Development at A.R.M Solutions. During her 12-year tenure with the organization, she has grown the corporate partner portfolio by 75% and contributed to the organization's recognition as a Forbes Top 10 collection agency and placement on the prestigious Inc. 500 list. She has also served on NPMA's Marketing and Membership Committee, where she has helped more than 1,000 pest control companies successfully manage their past due accounts. While amassing her 15 years of experience in the financial industry, Dahlgren grew to understand the importance of implementing policies and procedures within accounts receivable processes that allow for minimization of DSO, while maximizing recurring revenue streams. Using this knowledge allowed her to work in partnership with businesses across various subscriber-based industries, teaching methods to meet financial goals as defined by credit and collections policy. Welcome back, Andrea.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Excellent. Thank you for the great introduction. You can see a little bit of a switch in my hair color here from my photo to now. I had to give up the red. I'm sorry, but all my redheads out there. But thank you for joining me today. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my presentation here, and we'll kind of get started. So let me go ahead and share that, and then give me my thumbs up here if we're good on the technology side of things. Perfect. And let's go ahead and get going. So thank you very much, Michelle. I really appreciate your great introduction here. It really does a nice introduction here I've worked with A.R.M for a really long time. A lot of great pest control companies out there I get to see. Pest World was in Boston this past year. So that was really nice to see a lot of faces. COVID had kind of changed trade shows here the last few years, and now it's time to kind of get back in it, do that, the great networking that we have with those trade shows. And now we're looking here at the end of 2022. I'm sure those write-offs are starting to creep up on your books. So we thought it would be a really good time to help automate your accounts receivable process in order to look at a better 2023. Now, as we go through, I'm going to implement kind of tips and tricks on what you guys can do today. Maybe taking a look at what your accounts receivable process looks like and modifying it for some potential outcomes we're seeing here with the economy. Now, background about me. Thank you for that, Michelle. But A.R.M, who is A.R.M? You've probably heard the name before within the pest control industry. So in addition to being a great partner of Field Routes, a longstanding partner, we are also ranked highest in customer satisfaction for the National Pest Management Association. So being their official collection agency is not something that we take lightly. Either as our partnership with Field Routes, we understand the importance and the trust that you place within a collection agency. So having someone that works and partners with you guys to make sure that we're following up on those past due accounts and doing so without ruining your reputation in the industry is an important part of that process. We want to make sure we're promoting that relationship, not being a hinder for that future revenue. So this is a little bit of background about us. So we're not just here overnight. We've been here for a long time. And then today's focus is going to be on automation. So when you guys are looking at your process internally in Field Routes has done a lot of the hard work for you. So they make sure that trigger rules and things are going to be in place in order to help, in particular with these four things. Minimizing that human error, lowering your overall collection costs is going to allow your staff to focus and have more time on new sales, new business, customer service. It's not necessarily replacing your staff, but by using the tools that Field Routes has in place in the software, it's going to allow a smooth and efficient process to allow those accounts to kind of move further along in that strategy. Increasing those internal efficiencies, allowing those actual people to go in there and have those conversations with new customers, existing customers, and allowing that automation process to work for you. When you take out the human element of it, then you take out the time that they would be taking in order to follow up on those past two accounts. So each person in your organization has, wearing many hats. So when they get busy, with new business or marketing or customer service, accounts receivable always suffers. It's never anyone's favorite thing to kind of follow up on is past due accounts. Sometimes there's tough conversations in there. But if we're able to put that automation in place, it's going to allow that process to start and then continue until they pay or that resolve that account. Now, let's take a look at what we're dealing with today. So the writing is on the wall. Here are the facts. So we're looking at higher interest rates on credit cards. You guys are already competing with holiday dollars here. So we want to make sure that we're getting you to the top of that stack. So we're already seeing here at A.R.M. higher delinquencies from our clients. So that means that more customers are trying to extend credit with you guys and allocating their dollars or their resources to those high inflation prices that we're seeing today. So, we want to take a look at, what we're going to do with this tough economy, taking all of this in and understanding that there's going to be less cash available in the economy. Let's use the tools that you have available. So let's look at your accounts receivable timeline and see how we can automate that process. So Field Routes has done a lot of that hard work for you. So if you're competing for those dollars, if your customers past due with you, they're most likely past due with 5 to 7 other vendors that they use. So how do you get to the top of that stack? Early and often is what we recommend here at A.R.M Solutions. So we know it's the colder months, so demand for your services is typically lower. There's a seasonality to the business, but as we're looking into 2023, we may look at employment rising. And some of our clients during COVID were trying to kind of pass along some grace to their customers, and they stopped collection effort or put it on hold. And what happened is that a lot of those pest control operators are now really trying to recover from that stop. So customers that need, you put them in the process, you want to follow up with them and make sure that you're allowing them time to pay their bills and giving them grace. But if you allow them to stack up 8 to 10 months worth of debt, it just keeps them buried deeper in that hole. So kind of think about that here with the economy. Now we know what we're facing, kind of let's get into some tools to help you guys reduce those delinquencies. Now we see some polls that are coming up here. So I'd love to be able to, have some interactive questions for you guys. So based on the current and economic conditions of the foreseeable future, do you anticipate an impact to your AR? I like to see how many no's I get out there, but I think most of those are going to be yeses so let's go ahead and, do our job here. Oh, I was right. One person. So that one person we got to find out what they're doing in order to kind of combat their AR. But credit and collections policy, why do you even need one? Why can't, Susie Q just get around to it when she has the time? Well, your credit and collection policy is there to protect your biggest asset, your accounts receivable. So let's do our job in creating a credit and collection policy and automate it to help retrain your existing customers and then set an expectation for your new customers. The new customers come in, they don't know what the old customers experience. All they know is what the new expectation is for payment. So again, early and often with your credit and collection policy. Don't let your credit and collection policy, don't just set it and forget it. It's something that you're always going to need to revisit. We want you to go in there and take a look at what your templates look like. Take a look at the messages to your customers. Make sure it's a progressively more aggressive an approach. And when you're doing that, you're helping to reduce the accounts that go into those additional aging buckets. We've seen a lot of success from our pest control companies changing from a quarterly to a monthly billing, allowing your customers to have each month to budget for that bill instead of having it build up over 3 months. And now, hey, let's go ahead and get that payment in. So that may be one thing you guys want to implement in your credit and collection policy. Make sure you follow it. Make sure the strategy is time sensitive. We're going to talk a little bit about age and when you place the accounts and the collectability of it, but make sure that your policy is in place and make sure it's available to everyone. And know when your next step is in your policy. It cannot be 6, 8, or 10 or 12 months, okay? We want to make sure that we're contacting your customers in a certain period of time. We recommend between 60 to 75 days past due is where that credit and collection policy should kind of stop. And then, of course, inserting the next step in that effort. There we go. Now, this graph that you see here on your screen is just talking about the rate of the collectability based on the age of the account alone. A lot of times collection agencies will say, hey, send it to us at 30 days or send it to us at 60 days because they get a big chunk of that account. And so it is something that, we want to make sure we're looking at the age. When you're working with us, and I'll go into services later on, but when we're working with us, it doesn't cost you any more to use this at 60 days or at 180 days. So we ask you to put us in a good position to help collect and retain that customer. So when you're looking at when to send the accounts out, you also have to look at, hey, how much am I spending internally on these accounts? Where am I seeing an internal drop off in payments? Because although your credit and collection policy should go, typically 2 or 3 months, we need to understand that early and often is, again, the most important part of the process. But the age of the account is always the biggest factor on how collectible it is. So consistency is key. And of course, evaluating those costs internally. Next, we're going to go into how to create a credit and collection policy, as well as implementing that automation to make sure it's being efficient for your internal staff. Now, let's go into how we improve our chances. So each step of the process is not going to get your entire population of customers to pay. There's different tips and tricks that we have in order to kind of reduce those accounts that go into the next aging bucket. So first, let's look at developing our credit collection policy. Now, you want to make sure that you are using all of the resources that you have available to contact your customers. Different types of population or different age groups are going to respond different ways to how you're contacting your customers. So email, texting, phone calls, snail mail. Snail mail is back, okay? We thought it was going out of style, but it's back. People are excited to get mail now. So you want to make sure that you're including all of these and scattering your times and dates throughout the process. And this should be over a 60 to 75 day time period. Now, you want to evaluate your length of what your internal credit and collection policy looks like, as well as your cost. So how much am I spending on these customers? If I'm contacting them for 4, 5, 6 months, you've probably spent close to $30 to $45 on contacting these customers. So make sure that your effort gets progressively more aggressive and you know when to insert that next step. Now, making sure that this credit and collection policy is made available to everyone is an important part of that process. So you never know who the customer is going to speak with, whether it's a technician, a salesperson, a customer service representative, accounting, collections. So if only your collection department has this credit and collection policy in front of them, then that customer calls in and they speak with a customer service rep, and they're there to help promote, and give great service over the phone. Getting a customer to pay the account can sometimes be an uncomfortable conversation, but if they understand that what the expectation is for payment due upon receipt, credit card payments, ACH, auto pay, let's get all of that in place when somebody calls in. That's going to help make sure that everyone is on the same page within your organization. Now, the next step 2 and step 3, which is collecting, connecting, really go hand in hand here. So you want to make sure that you're collecting comprehensive contact information at the time of the sale. This is key. This is very important because you can't automate your process unless you have the information to do so. So making sure you're collecting this information at the time of the sale. And I'm going to go into that a little bit more in depth next. Now, when you're connecting with these customers, you want to make sure you're staying in touch, again, early and often. You want to make sure the customer is happy, as well as, again, that progressively more aggressive approach. And then you want to make sure that you keep your customers updated on their status and align it with your expectations. So don't let them dictate their own terms. You set up the expectation from the beginning, from the time of that sale. And then the 4th step is using your technology. Now it's time to automate the process. So this is going to help to improve your DSO and make sure that this accounts, again, are progressively moving through the process, and therefore less and less accounts are ever going to go to that write-off status. Now, when you're looking at the time of sale, when the person is happy, you've solved a problem from them, this is the time to get this comprehensive contact information. Now, I know some of these things may be out of reach when you're looking at, including them on your service agreements, but you want to make sure that, especially if you're extending credit to these customers, that you get all of this information up front, at least as much as you possibly can. You want to start at the time of the sale. So when that technician or that salesperson is on the phone with that person, with the customer, they're happy. Again, you've solved their problem. So this is the time to talk about the expectation for payment. So, hey, I went in, I serviced you today. You're going to receive an invoice here in the next 24 to 48 hours. Look for it in your email. There'll be a link to pay online. You can set up auto pay, maybe offering a discount for auto pay if that's something that you guys have available. But it should be an immediate invoice that they receive. If it's not, when you're there and you have a handheld and you can send it, immediately sending that invoice. When you're making those follow-up calls down the line, continually verifying this information. It's always going to change. Updated email addresses. This is not only important for your AR process, but it's also important for your salespeople. We know that you're cross-selling and you want to upsell your customers. So if they can't get a hold of your current customer base, this is one of the most common things when a client first comes on board is that they say, I don't have email addresses, I'm missing phone numbers. And you're like, this is an important part of making sure you're growing that customer base, not just from adding new customers, but hey, I offer termite, I offer pest, I offer all of these types of things. So let's get this comprehensive contact information up front. And then there's one thing I did want to talk about here on this slide is Social Security number and date of birth. I know this is probably a little bit of a surprise, but this is something that if our pest control companies want to have credit reporting leverage down the line, that one of these, either or, not both, but Social Security or date of birth needs to be collected from the customer in order for the credit bureaus to accept that negative mark. Now, this was a law change back in 2017, so it's fairly new in the collection world, but it is something I like to let my clients know. So that way, if they do want to have that leverage down the line, this is the time to collect that. Now, let's look at your aging buckets. What are they doing? We can kind of see here how we go from green to red here fairly quickly. But you want to make sure that in each part of the process, you're inserting a different approach. So that way the customer is fully aligned with the expectation that you're setting for them. Okay. So now, once the customer enters that 1 to 30 day bucket, and this is past due, okay? So this is not, day one, but I would encourage you to start at day one for a lot of these tips and tricks that I have here on the left-hand side. So invoicing immediately and doing a follow-up phone call. Now, this may sound a little bit aggressive to have a follow-up phone call early in the collection effort, but it is not a collection call. It is a customer service call with a little bit of a collection focus on the back end. So you're calling the customer, verifying they received the invoice, have any questions on how to make payment, and of course, inserting what your expectation on payment is. Just to let you know, we invoices due upon receipt, and these are all the ways you can pay us directly. When you're having those conversations with your customer, get them set up on auto pay right away. Again, you're not going to have to deal with them in 30 or 60 days if you have that credit card or checking information up front. When you're doing these follow-up phone calls, you are also talking about service. So how is your service? Maybe there's an upsell opportunity here. So these are great ways to have an early and often effort for your customers. And they also know that you're going to be contacting them right away. So they're not going to be allowed to float here for 60 to 90 days without making that payment. This may be a little bit early in the process, but assessing interest or late fees. It may not be until that 31 to 60 days past due, but a lot of my pest control operators are assessing a small percentage or interest. And again, that's to help curb the customer's behavior and saying, this is not a free bill, okay? We've extended you credit, we provided a service for you, so now it may be time to insert interest charges. Staggering the times and dates you're calling. So accounting people are pretty regimented. They say, okay, from Wednesdays from 12 to 2, I'm going to make my follow-up calls. I'm going to send my letters. I'm going to help get those past due accounts paid. But if that's the only time you're contacting your customers, you do only receive a small percentage of the population. They're actually going to answer those phone calls and make those payments. So try to stagger those times and dates. So that way you can get people that maybe are at work later in the day, calling them, and then in the morning for people who are maybe have later shifts. So again, scattering times and dates, and then also keeping a note or a record inside your field route system saying, hey, left a message, or hey, this is what the customer's response is. So that way the next person that speaks with their customer understands what has happened on that previous phone call. This should happen for anything, customer service, accounts receivable. So that way, you know the next step in the process, and the next person doesn't have to start from scratch. Now, as we move into the yellow bucket here, now it's time to change your position. You want to stand out from the crowd at this point. You've given them some great follow-ups in the first 30 days and allowed them to kind of, dictate their own terms, but now it's time to change your position. You want to change your letters and your templates in here, talking about potential consequences, further action may be considered. Maybe extending a payment plan at this point. A lot of our clients allow, our past due customers to get on payment plans to help them get caught up. You don't want to get that, set up that payment plan too far down the line, because customers, again, will be deeper in a hole later on. But getting those payment plans, and then of course, when you're sending statements and using the automated system in field routes to send those statements, you want to make sure you're highlighting past due charges. So it's not, hey, you owe $150, you owe 75 is current and 75 is past due. They need to see that. It can't just be a running total each month when you're sending them that statement. And this may be the time where you use that additional contact information. Maybe not too early, but additional email addresses, text messages, things like that. This may be where you've sent them a snail mail letter or you've sent them an email. Now it's time to kind of change the game. Once we're entering that 61 to 75 days past due status, your customer is only a customer if they're paying you for your services. I hate to break it to you. I hear a lot of our clients are like, I want to protect my customers. They're 6 months, 8 months past due. And I'm like, you're providing a free service for them at this point. Why do they want to pay their bill? So you want to always make sure that you're setting expectations for payment. We know that you've had some of your customer for 20, 30, 40 years. So there may be a little bit of retraining that happens, but always blame it on the process. Say, oh, my accounting department, we've shifted it to a more of an automated process. So you're going to see this regularly. It's just how we're shifting our business moving forward. So again, it's not something that you did. We're using that process and using that to our favor. And again, changing your position, a further escalation, letting them know, hey, there's a potential for your service to be cut off. There's a potential for a collection effort. But you don't want to do the same thing for the next 60 to 90 days, okay? So if a customer sees what your process looks like, they understand that. Because again, they're past due with 5 to 7 other vendors that they use. So they get to see who cuts off service, who inserts late fees, who sends to a collection agency, and they will typically pay their bill based on the consequence. So don't continually do the same thing. It's time to insert a different effort at this point, as well as evaluate that internal spend. How much am I spending before I do that write-off or send out to a collection agency? And of course, what collection agency you pick is going to be an important part of that process. So making sure that you choose that right third-party collection agency. So we all want to know what your current collection method looks like. So do you use emails, letters, phone calls, texting? They should be all implemented at different time periods. So we want to hear from you guys what you guys currently do, and then possibly what you're going to implement here for 2023. Now, combination, I like that. See, we're already on the right track here, Michelle. So now let's introduce automation. So if you already have not put this in place, Field Routes has done a lot of the work for you. So there's 2 different places you're going to be able to find this information on how to set up your trigger rules. The first place is at the bottom of your Field Routes desktop. There's an in-depth guide on how to set up these trigger rules. When you set up a trigger rule, you can send a template email. It'll contain a link that goes directly to their portal on how you can pay, pay your customers. So the customers are going to pay directly from this link, directly from this portal. You're going to be able to email statements. You're going to be able to send snail mail letters. So taking a look at what those snail mail letters look like, the messages, making sure you're further escalating it as it goes through the process. And of course, snail mailing statements as well. Another thing that you can go ahead and take a look at is the webinar that Field Routes has. So in their library of webinars, there's a trigger rules that will help you to not only implement AR trigger rules, but the other trigger rules that they have in place in their system. So let's take some time, set that up. And of course, take a look at this in 3 or 4 or 5 months, see what your aging is doing, and seeing if it's moving that right direction. So your DSO should be shifting downwards. Now, the second automation enhancement that you're going to be implementing is at the time of the sale, getting that credit card, auto pay, making sure the customer, that's going to be your first line of defense here in combating past due AR, is getting that auto pay set up. So when you're making those customer service calls or at the time of the sale with the tech or the salesperson that's speaking with them, talking about the benefits of auto pay and making sure that if your customer or if your company does provide some sort of discount for auto pay, mentioning that as well. And of course, electronic invoicing. So statements, electronic invoicing, utilizing your software to have those sent automatically, as well as, guess what? We're a trigger rule. So utilizing the trigger rules that you have, there is an A.R.M. trigger rule that you can implement that helps to flag the account that it's with our office to try to resolve. So you can send accounts at a certain aging date, but it also helps you update accounts at a certain date as well. So it's an automated process. Say I want to send accounts over to A.R.M. at 60 days. I flag it, it sends it. And then of course, those updates are going to come over to us automatically on a nightly basis. There we go. So what is this going to happen? What's going to happen? Okay, so now I've put all of these great automation tools in place. So what should the results look like? Now, our clients that have an automated process before they send accounts to us have better resolution and lower cost per dollar. So does that mean? It means more net back to you guys. So when you're looking at averages of what collection agencies typically resolve, they only typically resolve about 14% of the dollars that are placed at an average cost of 33%. So you can see both of these clients are, far exceeding that national average. But you can see the client here on the left, they don't have an automation in place. All they do is they have, when Susie Q has time to kind of get to it, that's when she's following up on those phone calls and letters and on those past due accounts. So you can see their resolution rate is far lower and their costs to collect on that is far higher. So when you're looking at client on the right here, they place a little bit younger, which is obviously an advantage because age is the biggest factor when collecting on any account. Their resolution rate is 3 times the national average at 42%, cost per dollar at 14 cents. So this is ideally where you want your aging and your resolution to look like from a collection standpoint if you use the automations and tools that you have within Field Routes. So customers that just get an invoice and get sent to collections, they don't resolve as well that customers have a fair warning process once before they get sent to us. If a customer gets just sent to collections after they received an invoice, they feel like, wait a second, well, I didn't even have a chance. I just got the invoice and then it kind of fell off my radar. But giving them that warning helps them to understand and set the expectation that you have on what is going to happen. So that final letter, that final email, that final text message that you guys are sending to your customers should let them know the warning or advancement of what's going to happen on those accounts. Now, I know we talked about it a lot today, and I'm actually going to offer up sample letters and phone scripts after the call. I did not share them on our presentation today, but that's something that we'll offer. And so Michelle here and Lynn will be able to send those out, or I can provide contact information if you'd like the physical letters as well as the phone scripts that we have available for our pest control companies in order to follow up on those past due accounts. But when you're looking at your write-offs, they're probably staring at you in the face, and that's why you've signed up for this webinar today. The time is now. Okay, I know it's a slower time of the year for you guys. It's just the seasonality of the business. So it's time to take a look at those write-offs and see where they're at. So we typically see on average about 3% of the total of your customer base come to us on a monthly basis. So that means 3% of your customers are going past due. If you're higher than that, that means it's probably time to tighten your AR policy. If you're lower than that, that 3%, that means you're doing a good job. But now it's time to revisit and say, hey, what is the economy telling me to do? It's not time to back off. It's time to enforce, what you guys have in place and make sure your customers are sticking to that. Because I'm sure that you've already seen, because we've seen delinquencies already rise. So this tells us that the economy is possibly taking that turn. So we want to make sure that we're prepared for that. So by having a strong credit and collection policy, you're going to be able to maximize that automation. So putting those trigger rules in place, sending letters, text messages, emails to your customers, letting them know what the process looks like, so then they understand what the consequences are the next step. Tomorrow's too late, okay? So the steps are already there for you guys. All you got to do is fill in the process. Make it a working discussion, a working conversation with you and your staff. Look at it in 3 or 4 months to say, hey, is it doing what I want it to do? How much am I spending on it? Where do I see an internal drop off in payments? Go into your emails, your letter templates, see what the messages are to your customers. And of course, you have those resources available on your desktop or that previous webinar and trigger rules to help you set up your internal process. So the time is now. So I think we may have, Michelle, correct me if I'm wrong, we may have some questions that we want to answer here from the group.
You are absolutely correct. But first, I just want to thank you for giving us such great information. And if you do have questions and you haven't done so already, go ahead and submit any of them that you have for our speaker using the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. Andrea will be able to answer as many questions as possible in the time that we have left. While you are submitting your questions, I'm going to ask that Lynn, our moderator, post a link in the chat to sign up for a free demo of Field Routes. For anyone who is not already a Field Routes customer, this is a great opportunity to experience our operations and marketing suites firsthand. And we are currently running an extended Cyber Monday sale that expires at the end of the week. So you definitely want to take advantage of the savings. Lynn is also going to post a link to get more information about A.R.M solutions. So let's go to our questions. Question number 1, can we send aging invoices to A.R.M without using trigger rules? Can we select and send them individually?
Yes, the answer is yes. So we would do that on an individual basis. We probably have you utilize our web portal in order for you to start collecting on those accounts, or in order for us to start collecting on those accounts individually. If you don't want to use the trigger rules, if you want to have a more of a hands-on process, you can actually send a group of accounts based on age and dollar value, and then it still will do the flagging process. But if you want to send individual invoices, not the entire past due balance, we'd probably have you place those individually.
Great. What is the best way to reach out to a customer in regard to an outstanding balance?
So I'm going to say that it's hard to pick one, Michelle. I mean, there's so many goodies out there. But I'm gonna say that most of our customers, you're not going to reach your customers on the phone a lot of the times. You know, you'll get voicemails, you'll have to leave messages in hopes that they call you back. A way that we recommend is actually an old school way, so snail mail. So a snail mail is going to, the person is going to take that notice, they're going to open it, they're going to see it's from a collection agency. They may not respond right away, but having a physical letter sent to someone's house. I don't know if you go out to your mailbox lately, but I get maybe like 2 or 3 pieces of mail a day. So anything sticks out to me. So the same thing for you guys. So dropping an invoice or a past due statement in their mailbox, if the tech is there to save on postage, or physically mailing that snail mail notice. And of course, including potential friendly reminders and final notices in the process. So don't just send the notice and say, or send the invoice or statement and just say, okay, you know, I've moved on to the next person. Let them know the potential for consequences, or reach out and, you know, and say, hey, let's get you set up on a payment plan. But including a notice in addition to that statement allows the customer to understand the next step in your process and then make their decision based on the potential consequence or the opportunity for that payment plan. So snail mail is definitely a recommended method, because about 100% of the population is, unless they've moved, is going to receive that piece of mail, open it up, and then create that action item.
Thank you. Another question. How does the automated trigger rules for submitting to A.R.M work if the system does not have the customer's social security number or date of birth in the system as information that can be automatically included with the submission?
Good question. So Currently, field routes does not include date of birth or social as a field that they include. But what we do is we have an additional process on our end. If you are signed up and want to do credit reporting, which is included with the cost of our service, then we build an extra additional template for you guys. So there'll be one additional column in there that has either that date of birth or social. And then we're able to capture that information. And then, of course, if the customer doesn't pay the account, submit them to the credit bureaus. I just want to make that clear. It's not a requirement for us to collect. It's just the credit reporting aspect from the credit bureaus to have that consequence down the line. So all the information that you already have in field routes is what we need. We've spent the time and invested to make sure that it's already in place. So you guys don't have to go in there and create it from scratch. But if you want that additional credit reporting leverage, then yes, we do have that additional template where we'll set up on our side.
Can you put things in a mailbox without it being a federal offense?
Yes, you can't take things from a mailbox, but you can put something in the mailbox. So you can absolutely drop off an invoice or a statement in someone's mailbox, but you cannot, I would not take anything out. That's where it's an offense.
Okay, I see that someone asked how they can get cost information associated with A.R.M collections. And I will say that Lynn, our moderator, put the website in the chat, armsolutions.com. You can add to that, Andrea, if you wanted to say anything.
Yeah, you can also email me directly. So my email address is Dahlgren, DAHLGREN @armsolutions.com. If you go to our website, there's a phone number there as well, but you can gladly send an email and I'll do my best to get those. I know that there's already some requests for those letters and some scripts out there too. So if Michelle, will you make my contact information available after the webinar today? Would you be able to do that?
Yes, of course. After
Thank
the
you.
webinar, attendees will be able to receive an email that will have your contact information, a link to A.R.M Solutions website, and they'll still be able to take advantage of our extended Cyber Monday deal as well. We have some more questions.
Nice.
Some of our customers don't feel safe about giving information like their social security number or their date of birth. What is the way to get it from them?
So it's gotta be, we typically recommend mixing it up with a marketing strategy. So if they're still around, I know a few of these shops have closed, but does anyone remember Baskin Robbins Scoop of the Month Club? So if you get a free ice cream to your birthday month. So what we typically recommend is having just date of birth on your agreements, because social is a little bit harder to obtain. We understand that. So if you have date of birth on the agreement, most of the time the customers will just fill it out or submit it online, whatever the preferred format is. But if they're asking, why do you need my date of birth? Then our pest control companies will typically tie it to a marketing strategy. So each month they'll pull a name out of the hat for that particular month for those birthdays, for say the month of December. And so, Michelle, your birthday is in the month of December. I pull it out of the hat and you receive a free service. Okay. So it's a benefit to them. So they have the chance to receive that service. So Baskin Robbins doesn't do that just to give you free ice cream. They want your information to market you and send you coupons. So this is how you're able to get that date of birth or information from your customers if you do want to have that credit reporting leverage.
That is very clever. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. I think we have a couple of questions that have to do with trigger rules. Is there a trigger rule in field routes to send a snail mail invoice if they are 30 days past due?
So I know I'm not the field routes expert here, but I can give you my notes. These are the things that the trigger rules can do in accounts receivable. So you can send a template, an email template that contains a link to your portal. So yes, you can send that email. You can email a statement, okay, as well. You can snail mail a template letter. And then finally, you can snail mail a statement. So those are the 4 action items that you can create as trigger rules inside field routes. But again, I'm going to reference that in-depth guide at the bottom of the Field Routes desktop for all the information. I don't want to not, I know there's a lot of other enhancements that you guys have, so I don't want to speak to all of them, but I know that those are the 4 that are available for accounts receivable.
I'll just jump in really quick on that follow up.
Thanks, Zach.
Yes, no problem. I have heard from customers in the past that they use it for direct mail purposes, exact ins and outs. I do know one other thing that we probably should have mentioned earlier. We are going to do a webinar with PCT on January 11th with 3 of our active customers, Tommy Shea, Jason Woodbury, and Greg C. And it is literally going to be about trigger rules, talking about all the different things they can do with trigger rules. So check your feeds and social media on Field Routes for that, because it's coming January 11th. So sign up for that webinar for sure if you have questions around trigger rules.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Zach. We have someone else who said, I would love to have the date of birth field available, not just for collections, but for customer service also.
Oh, that's actually a really good point, because if someone, it's their birthday, or if it's their birthday month, you always want, when you're speaking on the phone with people, to kind of ease their tensions. You always have relatability. Hey, it's the holiday season, or it's your birthday, or summer's coming up, 4th of July. We have all these great things to discuss in addition to the business at hand. But if you have their date of birth and that's their birthday month, wishing them a happy birthday is a great way. They're like, wow, they really know me. They care about me. That's a great suggestion.
If someone has their credit card on file within Field Routes, but they're not set up on auto pay by their choice, do we have the legal right to go ahead and charge the card at some point if they failed to pay?
So I'm not a lawyer. I want to state that. It does not sound like a good practice to me. I think you want to always be very open and honest with when the customer's card is going to be run. So if you do have a card on file and they have not set up for auto pay, then my recommendation is not to run it, but I would check with your lawyer, like legal staff, just to make sure legally what you can do. If they are past due charges, say you have that card, to run it. I don't want to speak on that, but I don't think it's a good practice just to run someone's card if they haven't signed up on auto pay.
Okay. We currently do not have anything automated at this time. We use snail mail with a color-coded note that stands out inside the invoice. We usually get a 40 to 50% response. Your opinion on continuing to use this method within automation would be appreciated. Thank you.
Yes, snail mail, I'm telling you, is definitely the way to go. I know it's a little bit more costly than an email or a text message, but different ages are going to respond differently. Your older population, they want that physical mail to be sent to them. They open it, they write a check, they send it back in. That's their process. Good luck changing it. You got your middle of the road people that want to receive an email and pay off a link and get it set up on auto pay. They're a little bit more established, and so they're not worried about those funds not being there, but they like the email communication because they're used to it. But then you have the younger populations. Don't talk to me, just text me. I want auto pay. I don't want to talk to anyone. I just want everything to be done on my phone. So, but then you have the middle of the road people. You have, different types of people that I still love receiving a snail mail. I'm not, I'm not as old as I may seem, but I do prefer that communication in addition to possibly that email, because my emails get flooded. There's spam, there's filters, there's clutter, there's all these different junk mail. There's all these different places your email can go. So by inserting text messages and having the opt-out process, obviously, having links that you can send the customer to pay on their phone or pay through email. You want to make sure that you're implementing each of these things and you're using them at different times in the process. There's not a one size fits all for credit and collections. The person who did highlight their past due charges, I think that was a question or two ago, that is the right thing to do, letting the customer know there are past due charges, changing the colors of your letters. You typically, looking at your desk right now, you'll have 5 to 7 pieces of white paper on your desk. There's something that's red, it's going to stick out, so do the same in your credit and collection process.
Wonderful. That is actually all the time that we have. We want to thank you, Andrea, and we really appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you to everyone at Field Routes. We really appreciate you having us on the call today, or on the webinar today. And I hope everyone has a very happy holiday season.
And thank you to all of our attendees for joining us. We hope that you found this valuable. Remember to watch your inbox and social media feeds for information on our upcoming Growth and Tips and Tricks series webinars. Everyone have a great day.